So, welcome to Conversations with Champions, a new segment from Echo India, where we bring you powerful voices from the front lines of change. In every episode, we sit down with individuals whose work is transforming systems, shifting mindsets, and making communities more resilient, from rural health workers and environmental leaders to educators, scientists, and social innovators. These are not just stories of impact, they are stories of insight, resolve, and the quiet leadership that often goes unseen. In keeping with Echo India's belief in democratizing knowledge, this series is a space where experience meets action and where we listen, learn, and grow together. As we recently marked World Environment Day on 5th of June, we find ourselves asking a critical question: where are we really on environment? In a world brimming with climate headlines and policy pledges, it's easy to forget that real change often starts far from the spotlight. It begins in the quiet resilience of individuals and the persistent work of communities. This episode brings you to such change makers who have shown that local commitment can create national movements. Their journeys speak not only to action but to transformation of mindsets, of systems, and of futures. Our first guest, Shri S Damodaran, a Padma Shri awardee, has devoted his life to restoring dignity through toilets, safe water, and menstrual hygiene, reaching rural and urban poor, coastal and tribal communities, and town panchayats across India. From his hometown of Oraipur in Tiruchirappalli, he founded Gramalaya and spent over 3 decades shaping India's sanitation landscape. Under his guidance, more than 6 lakh household toilets were built through every major government sanitation program, from the Central Rural Sanitation Program to the Swachh Bharat Mission. His work has trained 100 NGOs, created sustainable model villages, and helped women and adolescent girls reclaim privacy, safety, and pride. It is a pleasure to have you with us, sir, today. Our second guest, Shri Anup Nautiyal, is a respected social worker, environmental advocate, and community leader whose work spans social development, sustainability, and grassroots governance. As the founder of the Dehradun based Social Development for Communities Foundation, he has become a leading voice on critical issues such as environmental protection, sustainable urbanization, and waste management in Uttarakhand. A compelling communicator and public thinker, Mr. Nautiyal has co-edited Making Molehills of Mountains, Demystifying Disasters in Devbhoomi, Uttarakhand, and its 2024 follow-up, Tales of Uttarakhand's Climate Crisis on Uncertain Development Model, the first books to comprehensively document the state's climate disasters, road accidents, and ecological risks. Under his leadership, SDC Foundation has forged meaningful partnerships with civil society groups, municipal bodies, and private sector organizations to champion circular economy practice, waste to fuel technologies, and citizen-led green city initiatives. Mr. Nautiyal's work is distinguished by its blend of advocacy and action, data and dialogue, rooted in a big commitment to empowering communities and building a more resilient future for the fragile Himalayan region. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. So I would like to start with you, Sai, sir. You began your work in 1987 at a time when sanitation wasn't part of a public discourse, let alone a national priority. What compelled you to see toilets not just as infrastructure, but as a question of dignity, especially for women and adolescent girls? Over to you.
It is nice to be here with all of you. So my journey began in the social development sector way back in 1984. After my college education, joined in an organization called Antyodaya, So Antyodaya is a grassroots level organization, a Gandhian movement organization, where my mentor trained me on wasteland development, tree planting, environmental conservation, mines land development, like that. I worked in Antyodaya for nearly 3 years. I learned the technology related to water and sanitation because he has earlier worked with Danida and UNICEF and Gandhian organizations like Sevagram, like that. So he trained me on sanitation technologies. So after I returned from Antyodaya, I joined. We have created our own organization with three of our college friends. Then we started working in the women's development, children development. But later on we found that the women in the rural areas are facing acute drinking water. We started working for drinking water, not only providing safe drinking water, but also we should work with sanitation for every household. So that way we have started our work. When we have started working in the sanitation sector, it was in 1986-87. We were the part of Central Rural Sanitation Program. From the Central Rural Sanitation Program till Swachh Bharat Mission Program, I was involved in all the flagship program of the government of India.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving us the context. So, Anup, sir, your work in Uttarakhand has blended data, dialogue, and community action in striking ways. Was there a turning point that led you to focus on climate and environmental justice, especially through public documentation like making molehills of mountains? And I'm very curious also about the title. I love the title of your book.
Thank you so much. आपने invite किया and very inspiring to listen to Sai sir and when he was sharing his story. So I actually was in college at that time. So I happened to study in the Delhi University, and it's really remarkable that he and others like him have such extensive. I guess it's about 4 decades now. सो 40 साल से ज़्यादा आप फील्ड में काम कर रहे हैं. इट्स वेरी नाइस टू मीट सच इंडिविजुअल्स, सच इंस्टीट्यूशन मेकर्स. Today stuff like environment and climate and everything has become very mainstreamed in our discourse and in our communication. But in the 80s, when Saiji started working, and if in fact, if I were to go even 1 decade earlier, if I were to talk about my state of Uttarakhand, when the Chipko Andolan started here in the 70s, nobody knew about environment, nobody knew about sustainability, nobody knew all these things. So I think these are the people, it is people like them that, who are the real change makers. And so before I answer your question, I just wanted to say thank you to Sai sir for sharing. And I hope one day I will get to meet you also and learn more from you face to face. I think it's been fairly organic, and like millions of common people who are increasingly disturbed and agitated, and with whatever is happening around them. So my journey has also been very simple, and I think it has just sort of course evolved is a very big word, but it has just moved along those lines, and one thing has led to the other. I happen to live in a region which, as you know well, and our audience who's going to watch this or watching this is aware that a state like Uttarakhand or Himachal or the Indian Himalayan region is very vulnerable from many various standpoints. So to answer your question again in one line, I will say that it has been organic. And as we go along, I can share a little bit more in depth as to a particular moment when it impacted me and it jolted me far more, and the book that you mentioned too, how that book came into being.
So both of you began with simple conviction and went on to build institutions. So for you, Sai, sir, from hand pumps to smart toilets to training over 100 NGOs, how did you scale Gramalaya? Like, and while doing that, still rooted very much in the field. So what was it that the process, so to say, what did it take?
The beginning of our sanitation program, the subsidy part was not available to everyone else. The amount of funds flow from government of India was not adequate. In fact, over the last 30 decades before the production of Swachh Bharat Mission program, almost for 30 years, since 1986 to 2014, there was an incremental percentage of toilets at every household, only 1 to 2%. Almost for nearly every year from 26% of toilet coverage. When Swachh Bharat Mission program was started, only it was to 32% of toilet coverage in India. But when Modi ji started working for Swachh Bharat Mission program, lots of campaigning, mass awareness programs, people's action, more allocation of funds towards construction of toilets, IEC, more funds were allocated, and the government machinery was involved fully. NGOs started involving in construction of toilet. That time, we started working with different institutions like Tamil Nadu Urban Development Project of the World Bank. Through World Bank Development Project in Tamil Nadu, we could able to reach more number of toilets, more than 4 lakhs individual households. In fact, we could able to collaborate with many organizations like Government of India uh, as a key resource centers. Gramalaya is one of the national key resource centers, which is providing training for government officials in South India on water and sanitation technologies. Other than that, we used to work with different international organizations like WaterAid. WaterAid was a very renowned organization, started way back in 1990 from India with a base at Tiruchirappalli, my hometown. They used to provide training to maintain even the hand pumps, caretakers through the caretakers training program like that. They attach different international level John Hopkins University, University of Sussex professionals to involve in the sanitation program. And many consultants used to visit Gramalaya. So they used to visit even from World Bank. They used to visit our office. UNICEF started visiting our projects location in rural areas. But what has happened, all these international renowned organizations working for water and sanitation, they wanted Gramalaya to scale it up from Trichy. We used to work only for nearly 15 years only in Trichy hometown only. But later on, they found that Gramalaya should come forward to create more Gramalayas in India. So Water.org started supporting Gramalaya through their lending program for sanitation. So it is, if we give grant fund for 100 toilets construction, it will earn funds within a year. But if you could give loan for construction of a toilet or installing a water taps, then they can revolve the fund for from 100 toilets to 1,000 toilets. That is the new concept that is called water credit. Water credit is a model that was field tested by Gramalaya successfully in India. Then later on, they involved microfinance institutions for scaling it up. So we started training NGOs simultaneously. At the same time, we also started working with microfinance institutions, very renowned organizations like Basics, Gramin Kuta, Ujjivan, low-cost sanitation cum scavengers rehabilitation program that was introduced in 1987 by Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. That was intended only for the town panchayat areas, city, town lakes areas, not for the rural areas. So we have constructed toilets, those days 5,500 toilets in two towns, Tiruchenkoot and Rasipuram in Tamil Nadu. That was a very wonderful program. Even after 35 years, these toilets are in usage and maintenance by the people. Almost 2 to 3 generations, they are using the toilets. And if anyone would like to visit Gramalaya, you can see all the toilet models that was introduced from 1989 onwards.
Initially, when you started sharing data, disaster data, so was there any kind of pushback, resistance from institutions or even from public, when you started sharing this statistics? What was the response like?
There has been no backlash. There has been nothing of that sort. Though things might not have moved in the way we would have liked that they move, but you know, and I know, and especially for the younger lot, if anyone of us watching us, is that these are issues and these are matters that take time. So one has to be relentlessly pursue these and not hope that with one intervention or with two interventions or a few interventions change is going to happen. So whatever that you're trying to, or whatever that you're seeking to change in the social space is if I were to talk about, Anuradha ji, your organization that works so deeply in education, I think education is one area where you really see the results after generations, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, something like that. So that is how I overall look at the question that you have asked me just now.
I just wanted to ask you that in a state like Uttarakhand, which is ecologically fragile and very complex politically, so what how did you start this conversation, about models that are not sustainable?
If you were to just look at the more sort of contemporary or recent history of Uttarakhand, the state was formed 25 years ago in the year 2000. But if we are to look at the recent past, and particularly in the past 25 years, I think one important marker in the history of Uttarakhand, in fact, the country also, is the Kedarnath tragedy of 2013. 50% of Uttarakhand is prior to Kedarnath and, Kedarnath tragedy, and now the intensity of these happenings have increased from 2013 onwards. So if that were to be a marker, and of course, there have been disasters. There have been earthquakes also in the 90s in Chamoli and in Uttarkashi district, and so on and so forth. But as I said, and I repeat myself, the intensity and the damages and the death and the destruction and the devastation from we can call it, of course, climate change. We can call it disasters. We can call it local issues. We can call it, due to the models of development that are being pursued. So this has, year after year, it has only worsened. The year 2023, from an Indian Himalayan region standpoint, which is Uttarakhand, Himachal, J&K, Ladakh, and then, our states in the northeast. So five key things happened in 2023. The first one was Joshimath. Then the monsoon of 2023 was treacherous. It was a monsoon that had never ever perhaps been seen in the history of Himachal Pradesh. The fourth thing, Anuradha ji, which happened in 2023, it's called GLOF. जब ग्लेशियर रिट्रीट करता है तो वो लेक फॉर्म करता है, पानी आता है, that lake breaks down and it comes down. So GLOF, disaster of Tista Basin in Sikkim. And the fifth and the last thing which happened in 2023 was the सिलक्यारा टनल. आपको याद है वो टनल में लोग फंस गए थे उत्तराखंड में. 41 people were trapped for a period of 17 days. Now, what does this indicate? This clearly indicates that something is not right. The Himalayas are the youngest mountain range across the entire world. They are the most fragile. With the kind of development practices that, so of course, government has a major role to play in that. And then also businesses, how businesses are operating. And then, of course, we as citizens or as consumers or as humans or as tourists. So each one of us in our own respective ways is damaging only this environment. And there is, it is no one's case to say that development should not happen. Everyone is pro development. But is this really the kind of development model that we as a human race or we as people or we as a nation need? No, I think the answer is a clear no. And even now, as we speak, the internet and social media is flooded with woos of tourists. I'm sure you've also seen कि भाई ऋषिकेश में कैसे traffic jam हो गया. Mussoorie में first time in the history of Uttarakhand, we have, one person died, a tourist died in a traffic jam in Mussoorie because the poor tourist who was 62-year-old could not go from one part of town to the other town. So where are we heading, And tourism, of course, is again, when we talk about development or when we talk about the economy, tourism is very, very vital. But, the model of development that, our governments, our businesses, our institutions, and we as people, all of us are pursuing, and we need to course correct urgently. And when we course correct, it is important that it is not top down. Someone is telling from the top that this is what you do. It has to be a bottom up approach because this entire conversation is about communities. It is about people. It is people that need to speak up. People need to be involved. People need to be engaged. Our governments need to listen. Our institutions, our public representatives, our officials, they need to talk to people. They need to listen to them and then come up with policies, which are more friendly for our environment and for our sustainable living.
So beautifully kind of explained, and you answered both my question and my next question, which I was going to ask, you already answered. But then we can ask Science that, any one environmental challenge we are still failing to address or something that, needs the urgency.
There is over exploitation of groundwater, and the groundwater depletion is very high. And if you drill a borewell for a hand pump installation, it goes up to 1,000 feet. Earlier, it was within 100 feet you can get water. So our drinking water sources, our dwindling snow caps, mountains, even Ganga becomes dry. Last month I used to read in the newspaper. So that was the water is a major problem we are going to face. One thing, madam. Another thing is the pollution of our environment, land, and our other resources. Natural resources is the major concern is the menstrual waste. Every day we are pouring tons of menstrual waste on the environment. So that's why we have introduced the reusable and washable cloth pads. You can wash it and reuse it so that you won't throw the menstrual waste into the environment. It is saving a lot of money to the government exchequer. Sanitary napkin will take and throw open in the environment. Will take nearly 500 years to 800 years to decompose. And also it is medically termed as a hazardous waste. So for that, we used to advocate nowadays the eco-friendly menstrual products, and we ourselves invented one cloth pad, reusable, washable cloth pad. So we could able to provide reach around 2 lakhs women in India, right from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. So the people are using those, the women and the adolescent girls are using those toilets. Period-friendly toilet facilities provided at the school level for girl student also now getting very good momentum. The school sanitary complexes are women friendly, girls friendly.
Thank you so much on that. So I think I hear both of you that it's not a, one individual or one, the government alone, everyone's responsibility. And, all of us have to reflect and see, the kind of practices. And I think it's also to do with the way, we think, mindset change and everything else. So before I go to the next question, I think Anoopji, initially you said I'll talk a little bit about my book. So very briefly, do you want to say like the inspiration and like what did you want to convey through that?
देखिए, ये जो पूरा पर्यावरण का नुकसान है वो सबसे ज्यादा गरीब इंसान को झेलना पड़ रहा है. पीपल लाइक यू एंड ऑल्सो एट एन इंडिविजुअल लेवल, साई जी एंड मी, वी आर अमंगस्ट द अल्ट्रा कंफर्टेबल, बट द impacts of whatever is happening around us are humongous for the urban and the rural poor. And while it's a fact, and we should be proud also a nation that many people have come out of out of the what you call the poverty line and all of that, but disproportionately it is the poor, it is women, it is children, it is the older lots who are impacted, far more impacted by whatever is happening around us. So from that standpoint, the challenge confronting the 8 billion people of this world is humongous. That is number one. Come to the book. Something very, very sad happened in our state. Very often, very sad things are happening. And as I was just mentioning, their intensity has only increased. If you look, for instance, at the ongoing Chardham Yatra, अभी एयर इंडिया का क्रैश हुआ, उसके 2 दिन के बाद में, did you read about the helicopter crash here in Kedarnath? So this is the 5th heli crash happening in Uttarakhand in 40 days in the ongoing Chardham Yatra. And out of these 5 heli crashes, 13 people have died in the first one and the 5th one. So on 4th October 2022 was a black day in the history of Uttarakhand. We lost 29 young people in an avalanche in the morning in the district of Uttarkashi. So they were students at the Nehru Institute of Mountaineering, which is a very prestigious institution. But as luck would have it, that they got stuck in an avalanche and 29 people died in the morning. And that same evening on 4th of October 2022, a bus fell down in another part of Uttarakhand, in a district called Pauri, and 34 people died there. So imagine 29 die in the morning, 34 die in the evening. And of course, these are very common things. And life moves on for everyone, including also for me. But something snapped in me on that particular day. After that disastrous day, I said to myself that we will start documenting the climate and disasters and road accidents of Uttarakhand. And that's how this small journey began. So from October 2022 till June 2025 is what? 12 and 12/24 and 6/30 and 33 odd months. तो 33 महीने हो गए इस बात को. So every month we release a report on these happenings in Uttarakhand, and we have given it a name also. And when we had collected or when we had documented 12, 13, 14, 15 such reports, I have a colleague, her name is Prerna. So Prerna and I came up with this idea that why don't we bring it out in the form of a book? And we not only our own reports, but we also bring in a range of experts. So we have about 14, 15 experts. Let the experts also write. So the whole idea is to document these matters and mainstream them in the conversation, conscience, and communication of Uttarakhand. Now, every day something or the other is happening here in Uttarakhand. But if we can somehow structure it and bring it in one place, and if you were to ask me right now, Anuradha ji, कि आपका long term plan क्या है, आप क्या करोगे, 2 साल बाद क्या करो, I don't have any answer. But the only thing that I know is, and this I'm going to link it with what we were saying earlier, that we have to be consistent, we have to be relentless, and who knows what will come out of it. But so far, we have come up with 2 books. We have come up with the first book, then we came up with the next book. We are documenting it. Hopefully, we'll continue to document it further. As we go along in this journey and we go ahead, new ideas will come. New people, will get in touch with us. Who knows who's watching this program of this Echo podcast on YouTube, and somebody might choose, to connect with us and say that, hey, I have a great idea that this is how, so because it's not only Echo or Saiji or me or 2 or 3. This has to be a public movement. But to build a public movement, you need to have a base somewhere. So that is, how we are, looking at this, approaching this. So if this can also become like one of the talking points and the rallying points is, also perhaps somewhere at the back of the mind, that it should also be able to influence policy and drive policy on the ground.
So I hear both of you when you said that the people who are impacted most by disasters or with all this are actually not responsible for it, and it is people who are sitting in their comfort zone are. It's also about the individual's responsibility as a
हमारा
society.
बहुत important role है. We have a role to
सबका.
play, हाँ,
So,
absolutely.
so as an educator, like, I always look at it. So schools are a microcosm of the society, and teachers are the gatekeepers, so to say, the attitudes, the beliefs, और इसको अलग से नहीं सिखाया जा सकता, अलग से नहीं पढ़ाया जाता. So when I am having discussion with my students, or, like teachers are having, so how should they approach? How do we educate our future generation? Starting today, now, how do we bring this into our school system where everyone is aware? So I am very hopeful that from our present generation, a lot of people will come up with new ideas. So from both of you, I want to ask, how do you see schools or educational institutions playing part in this journey, so to say?
There is a saying, catch them as young. So children learn quickly things, and if you could go for a school hygiene education program, that what we are doing already, we can inculcate the habits of environmental concerns, saving our water sources, tree planting, all this will come. So children will act as ambassadors of change. There is a approach called child to child approach. So if one child learn how to wash their hands with soap, another child will also learn from this child. So from child to parents, the parents to the community, we can educate them on all environmental conservation activities, right from tree planting, wastewater management, hygiene, personal hygiene behavior. Schools are within 4 walls. The future of the India is being built. So the children most important in the communities to spread the hygiene messages or environmental messages like that.
Schools and children play, needless to say, a very, very vital role. And it's cliched, but it's a fact that, they are the citizens of tomorrow. One of our key focus areas is plastic waste management. So we have set up a chain of 300 plastic banks. We work with close to 100,000 people in Dehradun or the Doon Valley. And out of that 100,000, more than 90-95% will be below the age of 21. But within this 100,000, 300 plastic banks, almost 100 plastic banks are in schools. तो वहां पे 40,000 बच्चों के साथ हम काम करते हैं. But on the whole, what we feel, and this is based on our own experience and my own experience also, not only with schools, but also with the larger community, that if there is honesty of intent, and that honesty and sincerity of intent is backed with consistent action, people will change and people will follow. And we are really happy that, the school students and the schools themselves have embraced this program, most of them, in a very wholehearted manner. But there is a lot of hard work that, goes behind operating this seemingly very simple plastic bank operation. So that is one thing I wanted to say. हम ना यहाँ पे एक्चुअली वी आर नॉट डूइंग एंड टू एंड सॉल्यूशंस. तो हम सारे ना जो वर्किंग हो रही है वो साइलोज में वर्किंग हो रही है. Someone is doing something, someone is doing. Similarly, if I were to talk about Swachh Bharat Mission, Swachh Bharat Mission has been a wonderful mission. And of course, especially with making of toilet, it has created a huge impact across the entire country. But another very major component of Swachh Bharat Mission is to make our cities and our villages clean. Now, cities like Indore have transformed, but cities in Uttarakhand still continue, and in many other parts of India, UP and other, especially North India, they continue to remain in the dumps. Why? One of the reasons is the lack of end-to-end solution. So, our Nagar Nigam is saying to us कि आप कचड़े को गीला सूखा करो. But when the vehicle is coming, then they are dumping everything in one place. So my whole point is that we need end-to-end solutions. We need to have an ecosystem approach. We need to stop working in these silos, and only then can change of size, scale, and magnitude can happen. That time of small things doing, of course, small things are also important. Consistency is also important. But we also need mega changes. We need mega trends. And just as we have Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, maybe we have Swachh Bharati, some, whatever name you can give it. So how can this whole philosophy of citizenship be inculcated amongst the 150 crore Indians? हम 1.5 billion है ना. So all Indians, whether they are 8 years old or they are 80 years old, how can all of us, become better citizens? I think is a major question, confronting our nation. So we will only become Viksit if all these 150 crore people realize their individual responsibility and they take action according to that responsibility.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. So I wanted to also ask on a kind of a lighter note. Firstly, that if you had a kind of a superpower to advance your environment mission, what would it be for to both of you?
I would say any superpower will be possible with the support of our communities. If I wanted to express from my own words, it is people's action.
वही है जो उन्होंने कहा है भाई, everyone should take responsibility.
Also, I wanted to ask both of you if any of our listeners want to start their own initiative, whether it's, in a village or a ward, what would your advice be to them?
I would say in 2 words: think globally, act locally.
I'll say that focus on one issue and work consistently. Like Saiji's example is a very good example. For the past 4 decades, he and his colleagues have been working in the area of toilets. Our nature of work is, we are very generalist and we are very scattered, and, we are trying to do 10 things. But I think I'm aware about our own limitations also. But for your question, especially for a young person wanting to make a career in the social sector, my advice would be to follow the Saiji model of not necessarily toilet. There are, the list is endless. There are, at least 100 things that you can work on. And these environmental and climate challenges will only increase in the coming years. There is no way that they will reduce. So whatever you do, if you just take one issue,
One mission.
one mission, one issue, and then you can spend the next, if you're 25, you can work for the next 60 years of your life on that one mission and really become like Mahatma Gandhi or become like Vinoba Bhave.
So thank you both, Saiji and Anoopji, for sparing your valuable time. So today's episode has shown us that environmental leadership doesn't always come with a title or a budget. It comes from patience, conviction, and a refusal to accept the status quo. From toilets to data, from grassroots to governance, our guests remind us that the question, where are we on environment, must be met with another. Where are we willing to go next, and together? So on this note, thank you all for joining us. Until next time, keep listening, keep acting, and keep championing the cause of our planet. So take care, everyone. Stay safe and hope to see you again.